What's going on, everybody? Anthony DeiCicchi, another offshore report brought to you by SiriusXM. Looking back a week, it's been a little challenging to get out. There's been some windows. But to kick it off, we got Jimmy back, which is a relief for me. Say hi, Jim.
Hello. Yeah, I was on family vacation last week, not doing any fishing. Did one day of fishing, but kind of put my head in the ground in the sand so I didn't see all the tuna fishing I was missing out on. But catching up this week, it seems like things are still going strong, but the weather has not been helping over the past week. I know, guys, there have been some windows and the fishing has been very good when you can get out, but the weather has been providing some challenges.
So taking it from the north on down, it's the same old story. I heard whispers of 2 to 3 miles out of Gloucester, like heading towards Jeffries, a little north of Thatcher Island, Rockport area. There were whispers about some wrecked fish over there. But another captain kind of corroborated he heard the same thing, but couldn't confirm with firsthand information. I also checked in with Pete Belson from Belson's Bait and Tackle in Situate, shop I used to frequent a lot living in Hull when I was tuna fishing, and he kind of said the same thing. It's been all big fish, 400, 500 pound plus. It's really been the deal for all of the Stellwagen bank areas, the northern grounds, even like the, Peaked Hill golf ball area east of Stellwagen, which always seems to have a class of really small fish running around in 500 feet of water that, some of the tuna gurus always kind of have dialed in. That's been non-existent. So all big fish up that way. And this last week, the quota was met and the giant commercial fishery has been closed down. That will reopen, I think, in September. I'm not sure of the dates, but that does not affect recreational anglers. That's one permit that it does not affect. So if you're tuna fishing, you happen to catch a giant, you were going to release it anyways. It's still fine to catch and release on a rec permit with the giant. So one thing I did want to touch on real quick, Jim, is the importance of reporting your catch. All bluefin tuna that you catch and harvest, there is a number to do that.
There's an app. They make it incredibly simple for you. When you get that highly migratory species permit, which is a requirement for targeting tuna and sharks and billfish, and that's attached to your boat, to the registered boat. Anytime you catch a bluefin tuna, you want to report your catch. And the reason for that is recreational anglers are the only data source for tuna in that size, for tuna below 73 inches. Every tuna harvested over 73 inches gets reported by the commercial fleet, by the commercial fishermen who caught it. Rec guys are the only data source for the smaller tuna, and that helps them keep a good handle on the size of the population, how many tuna are being caught, and they can adjust the regulations accordingly. They can know if the fishery is healthy or if something needs to be done. And it's really simple to do. It couldn't be easier on the app. We have we actually have a little video showing how to do that.
Yeah, we're going to have the info in the description on this week's report so that you can go and download the app or reference the number. But it's important to report your fish.
But talking about the giants, they've been eating on Stellwagen. I know guys were using a lot of mackerel for bait.
It's gotten tougher. It's progressively gotten tougher for people to make bait. I've been hearing that as well.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been tougher out east of Cape Cod and up north of Cape Cod, but down south, I know guys haven't been having too much trouble getting mackerel for bait. But I remember a couple years ago, we ran into this situation at the Regal Sword when there was a really good giant bite there, where you spent more time catching mackerel. You would spend an hour and a half catching mackerel, and then a mackerel would be swimming on the bottom for 20 minutes before it got ate. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the fun of it. But I know while the tuna have been eating mackerel and sand eels closer to the Cape, I'm talking within 3 miles of the outer Cape, off Provincetown, they've been on bluefish. There's been a tremendous school of bluefish that kind of parked it off Race Point all summer, and the light tackle Inshore fleet's been catching those bluefish. They've been the bread and butter of the charter guys there. And on more than a few occasions, we've seen videos of guys fighting, reeling in bluefish, and having a giant bluefin tuna eat it real close to the beach. I mean, you're not going to land it on the striper and bluefish gear you're hooking them on, but that's been really cool. That's kind of been an exciting little twist of this season is seeing all those bluefish, and then the giants definitely honing in on them. But also giants have been good south of Martha's Vineyard. There's been a pretty good giant bite, and I know guys who've been coming in from fishing, let's say the dump area for the recreational size bluefin and yellowfin, and they've come across giants on the surface and much closer, just to the point where it's just south of Noman's Island. They've seen them, so there's a good class of giants there. But like you said,
get out there and put a kite up.
It would be, with the bluefish on it, man, that'd be incredible.
Yeah.
But like you said, the quota's closed for now. It's going to be closed for a couple more weeks until we get to September and the sub-quota opens back up. So while those giants are there, if you are going to fish them, make sure you take good care of them, fight them quickly. As
proper
Captain
gear, fight them on proper gear.
As we had Captain Dom on the podcast last year, and he said, man, pop it or stop it. Like you want to... It does you no good. It does the fish no good to sit on this thing for 3 hours when you have to release it. Yeah. So just crank that drag up. Make sure, trust in your knots, trust in your gear, and get that fish to the boat quickly so you can let it go. Absolutely.
So I've heard that there was that mixed bag bite kind of everywhere from the fingers and inside fingers, kind of moving a little north. Of that south of the vineyard kind of sweet spot.
You talking giants still?
No, there's been some yellowfin that moved in there with some wreck bluefin. Same thing for the claw this last week, but there was also giants mixed in with some bigger wrecked fish there. And then the bite that we've been, kind of enjoying, and with everybody else that's been going on.
That south of the vineyard, east of Block Island, that bite that all the boats from Montauk, from Rhode Island, Connecticut, from Cape Cod that they've been converging on. I got to hit that on a spectacular day last week. Cheech covered this in last week's report with Captain Rob Taylor. And one of the really cool things about that day out there was not only the mix, we had about an even mix of yellowfin and bluefin.
It's awesome.
But the size mix of the bluefin that were out there was really cool. There were a couple boats that reported. I know Captain Dom on the radio said, I just caught a 20-inch bluefin tuna. So there were 20-inch bluefin tuna. We landed one about 70 inches. So to have that mix, man, it's just such a good sign for there being a healthy population. We see that mix of sizes in one area, and then you have the yellowfin in there on top of it. I did not, like I said, I was kind of intentionally off Instagram this week. I didn't want to see all the tuna posts of what I was missing. But as I'm catching back up, saw some guys got out there. I saw Blue Line Charters, who's a charter captain out of Watch Hill, Rhode Island. He posted some videos this week where he went out there in some rough conditions, and the fish were there. He had big waves, tons of, it looked like raindrops the size of golf balls, but they were constantly hooked up on tuna. So the guys that were able to get out there safely found the tuna were still there. Coming through the weekend, we still have some southwest wind the next couple of days. And it's flipping around to northeast, Sunday night?
Yeah.
And I know you were a little concerned how that was going to mix up the water temperatures out there, what that means for the future of this south of the vineyard fishery that we've had. I mean, it's been going since late June at this point. It's going to end eventually. I want to get out there at least one more time before it's over. But, eventually all good things come to an end.
Yeah, I mean, I was worried about that, with the last blow before last week's report, and it didn't really affect it, but I didn't really see a sustained wind coming out of the northeast for a long period of time, which I don't know. Monday, Tuesday looks like it may be that first sustained one from that direction. So we'll see. My advice would be to monitor the water. What yellowfin like 71, 72, 73 degrees, and if that water vacates that area, then you're probably, if the bait stays, they're just going to find bluefin.
Yeah, I saw a report on Instagram, I think by either Tall Tales, who's a charter captain, Connor. He actually does some writing for the magazine as well. I think it was him. He wrote that he got out there, and this was sometime in the last week, and found a pretty sharp temperature break between, let's say 72 and 68. Those might not be the exact numbers, but in that dump area, in that south of the vineyard area. And he said on the warm side, it was all yellowfin. On the cool side, it was all bluefin.
That's awesome.
But the posts I've been seeing from the last couple of days, the guys have been getting out there, has been predominantly recreational sized bluefin. So
don't kill off our yellowfin inshore hopes just yet. South of the vineyard, south of Block. I was supposed to get out Wednesday with Joe Baggs from Joe Baggs Tackle, and he had a banner day throwing sand eels and caught predominantly yellowfin up to 90 pounds. Smallest was around 50 pounds. So that's still a good sign. Let's just hope that holds for selfish purposes. But yeah, what's up moving south, Jim?
Well, speaking of the yellowfin up to 90 pounds, that's a real big one. The one we saw with Captain Rob Taylor that we caught that day, I'd say we're mainly like 40 to 50 pound yellowfin. Good sized ones, great fight. But there have been some bigger ones out there. Dr. Jeff Kneebone, who we had on our podcast earlier this year, and who actually does some tagging for yellowfin tuna, was dead sticking a pink Ronzi and caught a 60, I think it was a 60-inch yellowfin, and it had those long Allison fins. Such a cool catch. I know Captain Rob Radliff, all the way down in New Jersey, was throwing poppers, and a guy on his boat hooked a 101-pound yellowfin tuna.
That was a real one.
That was
beautiful.
There are some big yellowfin around being caught on light tackle. Like, that is such a cool fish. I mean, we're kind of spoiled with the bluefin fishery we have up here, being able to catch 100, 200-pound bluefin on spinning and jigging gear. But to be able to see a yellowfin that size is very cool, and they're definitely out there for them. You have to get a little lucky, put yourself in the right zone, and hope that the right one finds your bait. But they're out there, man. Over the last couple of weeks, we've been hearing of more of those bigger 90 to 100-pound yellowfin.
We're just never satisfied. It's like we have the best bluefin fishery in the world, and it's like, but I want to catch yellowfin now, and I want to catch him my way.
Let me take it further. I was fishing with kind of a local stick down in South Jersey, and we were targeting sheep's head. I caught my first New Jersey sheep's head. Awesome fish, but I know this is a tuna report. While we were fishing, we were talking about, conversation always drifts to tuna fishing. No matter where I am, no matter who I'm fishing with, we kind of always get there. He was talking about the light tackle bigeye fishing he had a couple years ago, back when there was a real strong bigeye bite in the canyons, and the mode was, if you were out there and saw pilot whales, run up on the pilot whales, throw poppers around them or drop jigs around them, and you would hook 80 to 200-pound bigeye. And now that's all I want to do. So like you said, you're never satisfied.
After popping those yellows, I only want to catch tuna on top now. It's like,
dude, I've not. I think I admitted this last year, but still kind of my private, now public shame. I've not caught a topwater tuna since 2016.
Yeah, I don't know how that's possible.
We're like 2 presidents ago, the last time I caught a tuna on top. I caught plenty on the jig, but I have not caught.
2 presidents ago. That's awesome.
7
years ago, Jimmy got a topwater tuna.
I know. One of these days, I had a yellowfin. I think one swirled on a popper. I don't know. I could have been seeing things, but I was there. I was present for your topwater tuna. But I do want to. I don't like you having that over me. But regardless, we talked about bigeye, light tackle bigeye. I haven't heard any of that this year, but it seems like over the last week, the bigeye tuna fishing has picked up. Jeff Lamonaco at Whitewater Outfitters talked about seeing more bigeye up in the canyons off, the eastern end of Long Island. There were a lot of bigeye caught, up to 265 pounds in the White Marlin Open last week. And that tournament was just crazy, the amount of payouts.
Was Jeff talking about the Hudson, do you know?
I did not see specific canyons. I'd have to look at the water temperatures for it. But I know... I didn't hear in recent days. I haven't heard of many guys getting out to the canyons. Like, most of the canyon news is about a week old. But the the bigeye bite in those southern canyons was pretty good. That was all the money fish in the White Marlin Open in the tuna category were bigeye from 210 to 265 pounds, and the 2 of them were worth more than $1 million. The billfish bite down in those southern canyons. Now, when you fish the White Marlin Open, you can leave from any inlet from Barnegat Inlet in New Jersey to Rudy Inlet in Virginia. So you cover a lot of ground, and there were 400 boats in that tournament. And throughout the tournament, they landed 558 white marlin, but none of them were a qualifying size. So they have to be 70 inches or 70 pounds to weigh in. So while there was plenty of action on white marlin in those canyons,
that's crazy. Put those numbers up, and there's nothing qualifying. That's good for the future.
That is good. It's great to hear those numbers. The big money fish there was a blue marlin, and I think they caught, I'm going to get this one wrong, but I think it was in the 30 to 50 blue marlin were caught, and only 2 were weighed in. So over the course of the tournament, there were 600 billfish
That's insane.
Caught. You had all the white marlin, you had the blue marlin, then you had a few sailfish, I think 10 sailfish, and then a spearfish was caught as well. And that's the round scale spearfish, which that's something, it's very easy to mistake that for a white marlin. You really kind of have a keen eye and really know your billfish to know the difference between them. I know one of the main differences is the location of the vent
Yeah.
I think it's like higher up on the round scale spearfish. But there was one of those caught. Anyhow, all those billfish were caught. Only 3 were weighed in. One was a white marlin that was too small to qualify for the prize money. You had a 640-pound blue marlin that set a world record for the most anyone's ever made in a fishing contest for catching a single fish. I think it was $6.2 million that the crew of the Floor Reel won for catching that blue marlin.
That's insane.
That's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
But inside the canyons in New Jersey, that yellowfin bite is still just getting better. We heard a couple days of guys seeing them out there, seeing good numbers of them, but they were a little bit picky. And then Shore Catch Charters,
crushing them.
Our friends Gene Quigley and Jimmy Frieda, they do a lot of tuna fishing down there. I think it was Gene posted a picture of the fish finder, and it showed you had the streak of bait in middle water column, and then the vertical slashes, like red slashes of tuna that were just kind of straight vertical lines. And that's a great sign of a tuna that is just ripping his way through the bait. Very active fish. That's a fish that if you get a jig in front of him, you throw a popper near him and he sees it, he's going to eat it. So those fish really kind of ramped up the last couple of days, and guys have had some insane numbers.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of awesome clips of guys running and gunning down there, popping yellowfin and, putting multiple fish on board, which is, it's the most exciting way to fish tuna. You're hunting them. It's very active, and there's no bait and weight. It's a lot of fun.
I really want to know how this yellowfin bite's going to develop, because last October, and I feel like I say this every week, there was that like once in a lifetime bite where guys were going out, easy limits of yellowfin, which is 3 per man. If you have 10 guys on the boat, you can come home with 30 yellowfin. So it's 3 per man, and they were getting full boat limits and basically hand feeding them. Like the tuna were following the draggers around, and boats would go out and they would chum with butterfish or peanut bunker, and they would pull them off the draggers. Now that's more of a fall type fishery, but I don't know. There's so many yellowfin inshore this year. I wonder if that's going to repeat itself again. But
September
right now,
30th is technically fall, Jim.
I know.
Get that date circled.
It might be our only trip to the canyons this year. It's looking like it was heading out on the Helen H on September 30th for an overnight chunk trip. Hopefully everything's still going strong then. I mean, we're still a month and a half away from that. Right now, the midshore yellowfin's good. And off New Jersey, there's still that close to shore bluefin bite happening. Guys are jigging squid, taking it over to some of the lumps. From what I heard, is you're jigging squid at some of the wrecks and reefs, taking it over to the lumps, and hoping that you get your number drawn for a, basically a bluefin. I think they've been in like the 50 to 60, maybe 70 inch range, but there's got a lot of competition out there. I've seen some guys post some delicious looking calamari feasts, so at least they're making the most.
The calamari feasts have replaced the sunrise shots?
It is, yeah. That is instead of the skunk sunrise picture, guys are posting like very elaborate calamari spreads.
Awesome.
So, but no, that's a way to make the most of your trip out there, even if you don't catch a tuna. And to have it that close to shore. The contingency plan, which is moving increasingly inshore in Jersey and Long Island and New England, is the Mahi. So you can always fall back on that. That seems to have really lit up over the last week.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot more Mahi talk, which to go out and not have to go far to catch Mahi is always a nice little treat.
And there's a lot of small ones around the pots. Cheat showed me a picture of some Mahi. Somebody was holding up, and he's like, that just looks like somebody took a bunker and painted Mahi colors on it. So there are some little ones around. If you're going out and you want to have that Mahi plan B, bring your Albie gear, like something very light. That way you'll still have some fun with them. But maybe bring something like some heavier striper gear. If you come across basically around the lobster pots, it depends how long they've been soaking out there. Like if they have a lot of growth on them, they haven't been checked in a while. Good chance there's a big school Mahi there. If you find something like a tree or an old plank,
that always has the bigger fish on it
because they've been out there for longer.
Yeah,
those things have been fishing around the ocean for a while. The lobster pots are always there. It's a limited amount of time because they check them, they clean them off, they put them back out there. You have a big floating tree that could be out there for weeks to months. It's a chance for the big fish, for the real food chain to get established on.
Yeah, I feel like there's like competition for that piece of structure, and it covers so much water that the alpha of each school's like, this is mine now, and I'm hanging with it, and there's only going to be a select few that join me. Always the bigger bulls, the bigger Mahi always seem to come off of chunk debris that's just random.
I know some of the biggest ones I've seen are been on full trees where you have like the root ball is kind of exposed, and there's just so many nooks and crannies for that as opposed to just a single buoy. Like it's a lot more dynamic structure. So if you see any of that out there, worth spending some time on, worth diverting from your tuna or billfish goals. To go
your biggest enemy out there and your best friend at the same time.
How do you cook mahi? Part of my problem is whenever I'm coming home with a bunch of mahi, it's always like I'm disappointed and I'm not excited about eating it at all because I didn't. You ever hear the term shoulder surfing? Like if you're in a crowd and you're talking to somebody, but you're looking over their shoulder for like someone you want to talk to more.
I do that all the time.
That's what I do when I mahi
I do that
fish.
at home.
But are you familiar with that expression?
Yeah.
So that's how I do what I do on a mahi fishing. Like we're rolling up to the pots. I'm always like, where's the tuna feed? Like where's the finning marlin? Like this is not the thing. You're not what I want to be doing right now. But I'm just doing this until I can find something cooler to do. That's how I feel about mahi fishing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's cool catching big mahi. It's cool. The best is when mahi are part of a great trip.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, oh yeah, by the way, we caught some mahi too. That's always great. But when you're trying to, salvage the trip on it.
Or if you go out just for them, and that's the only expectation.
If you go out just for them, you tend to do it in a more fun way. A lot of guys are like, I'm going to bring an 8-weight and a 10-weight fly rod, and I'm going to catch mahi on the fly. And I think stuff like that's really awesome.
And you can do that this time of year. We've got the warmest water temperatures of the year coming up over the next few weeks. Usually early September, late August is when the nearshore waters are at their warmest. And that's when the mahi are going to be in easy half-day trip range for some parts of New Jersey. You run out and you get to the pots, you have that 70, mid 70, high 70 degree water, and you just kind of do your little milk run, go pot to pot to pot, keep your eye out for other structure. And, so the mahi fishing, like I said, really lit up the last week. The water temperatures are right. Good conditions close to shore, and guys are catching a ton of them.
Yep. I mean, they're the fastest growing fish in the ocean. Keep that in mind. Maybe kind of be selective in what you take home. You don't need to take, every single one that you can pull out of a school home and come home with 200 fish.
I've always heard they don't freeze well.
Yeah, I've always heard that too, but I left the skin on in the last couple that I filleted, and they held up really well, in my opinion. But I also like blackened them and tossed them in tacos.
I interrupted you before you answered, but how is that your main way, blacken and...
No, I wouldn't say that. I kind of use that for ones that I freeze and cook after. But fresh mahi, I'd have to go with ceviche being the best. I went on a stretch where it was kind of my nice little surprise or thank you, where it's like, oh, you're inviting me to the canyons. I would stay up the night before we were leaving, and I would put together basically everything that you needed for ceviche except for the fish. So we'd go, we'd get out there and would stop at a pot first, or we'd hit some pots, catch some mahi, and then, we'd get the trolling spread out or do whatever we were doing out there, and I'd just kind of fillet them up, cut them up, throw them in that ready to go ceviche, and then the next morning, the next day, it's ready, and it's a nice little treat. You get some Tostitos. Mwah.
That's nice. Now, do you put watermelon in your ceviche?
I won't shy away from that. It doesn't scare me. Was that a threat?
No. Joe Cermelli gave me his of Cut and Retie podcast years ago. Gave me his ceviche recipe, and it included watermelon.
Fruit's mandatory. I don't really.
It's mandatory.
I think so. You got to have mango or watermelon. You got to have something sweet in there with the acid. Absolutely, and then you got to balance it all with spice. Yep. I wouldn't call cilantro sweet. What are we doing right now?
I'm not saying it's sweet. I'm saying, is it mandatory?
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. Cilantro, some sort of fruit juice, some fruit.
You can tell it's a shit weather week when we're talking about recipes.
Red onion is also definitely needed, and you need some heat. You need some sweet, and you need some acid. That's all you really need. But the most important part of that whole equation is you need the fish. So, I used to always go out there with that ready to go, and it was a nice little boat snack, There
you go. Well, that's a hot tip there. Bring your ceviche ingredients if you're doing an overnight canyon trip. Give yourself a nice mahi breakfast the next day. And I guess, do you have a Facebook report this week?
I do, Jim. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, let's go.
I do. Last week we didn't have one. I was flying solo, and really wasn't much out there that I liked. So I'm going to give you guys the little social report treat today from Scott Simone. Northeast Offshore Pelagic reports 2 for 4 on yellowfin in the 45 to 50 pound range came across life on the run from Suffolk to the dump at sunrise. Throughout a spread for a few minutes until a tuna blitz erupted. Sharks, bluefin, yellows, everything rolling on a massive sand eel ball. That's real cool. We circled a couple times having success around the outside with poppers and jigs. That's awesome as well. Special thanks to the moron on the center console that finally noticed and charged full speed into the middle of it, forcing them down and ending everything in 30 seconds. You suck as a fisherman and a captain. So we just talked about this, like 2 reports ago.
You wrote about how you read a report where he was praising, the guy was praising how everyone's good behavior around the whales. And now here's the opposite.
This guy must not listen to our reports, because we could have saved him from being that guy in someone else's post and ruining the bite for a bunch of people. There's nothing more aggravating than having something like that unfold and someone comes in and does that to what everybody could probably enjoy for, a while longer than 30 seconds.
The sharks on top, mixed in with the tuna blitzing. That's pretty cool. That's a cool
like a
little twist.
Really cool scene that I would have liked to have been a part of. But
there is so much life down there right now. It's been so good. One thing we didn't touch on is Wahoo. Pretty good Wahoo reports this week. I know they had some in the White Marlin Open. Saw plenty of reports of guys getting them, actually targeting them off Jersey in the canyons and just inshore the canyons on the flats. And some big ones too, fish into the 70, 80 pound range, which is a pretty good Northeast Wahoo.
I would love to go target just Wahoo. I would love to just break open the fish mapping.
That sounds like a recipe for a Mahi.
Yeah, that is a recipe for a Mahi ceviche recipe. But that would be so awesome to do. Just pull it up, be like, all right, this is the zone we need to focus on. Put literally a dedicated Wahoo spread out. And then, you always have your fallbacks. You can come in and catch bluefin on the way back. At the claw coming back home, you can hit the bite between the dump and coxes. So I think you kind of have your bases covered, but why don't I want to do that so bad?
I'm going to read a little report too. That I saw along those lines of taking the chance out there and not being afraid to come back with a skunk. And it was by Fire Island Sportsman. I really like the caption. The humbling effect of offshore fishing. Don't matter how big you are, meaning your boat, how good you think you are, nothing out offshore is given. It is all earned through dedication, perseverance, and getting lost in the pursuit. That's offshore fishing. You will notice you catch most when you're least expecting it, because when you least expect it, that's when you're fully immersed in the pursuit of the challenge. If it's not challenging, then what are you doing it for? Expectation is the killer of all. It's dedicating to the unknown that makes you receive the greatest reward. It's a fool's endeavor to try to go offshore and expect to catch. So I really like that. That is a good...
What did he catch?
They catch a ton of fish.
No, I know, but what did that trip bear? It sounds like it would have been a lot of surprises. That brought a tear to my eye, by the way. It's very well written.
I don't think it was about one specific trip. It was just about... It goes on for a little bit. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I
thought he was referencing a trip that he had just come back from, and that sounds like a big picture kind of take on offshore fishing, which was beautifully written.
I think it was kind of a nice break from. So that's Captain Steve Gifford, is Fire Island Sportsman on Instagram, and you see a lot of you post and you celebrate amazing day out there, 6 for 8, and a lot of chest thumping, which we do too, but. To go and show the full scope of the pursuit, that you're going out there into the unknown, you don't know what you're going to encounter, and you have to be okay with coming back with nothing. That's really that's the norm.
There's no better feeling than being on the back of a boat in the middle of the canyons and the pitch black. The sky's amazing. It looks like a city out there at times when there's, a lot of boats out there. But you have this little piece of the abyss to yourself, and you never know what's going to show up in the lights. You got your sword baits out, and it's literally the feeling of anything can happen. And it's a pretty amazing feeling.
But just setting your expectations, just knowing you're going out there into the unknown, and that nothing there is a given, I thought that was a really nice perspective from a guy who catches a hell of a lot of tuna, too. It wouldn't mean as much coming from me.
Same.
But anyhow, thank you for tuning into this week's report brought to you by SiriusXM Marine. Be sure to check us out next week, and I think it's a chance we're going to be tuna fishing early next week. Hopefully we'll have some firsthand reports. I know I'm actually smallmouth bass fishing this weekend, doing a little mix-up, do some freshwater. Don't you worry about where.
I want to come. I love smallies. Final thought from me is I just want to extend kudos to the White Marlin Open fleet of boats to do those kind of numbers and not have, a much larger amount of fish weighed in that weren't, that didn't make the minimum weight.
No, they showed a great amount of restraint in terms of taking the fish. And fishermen are great conservationists, especially the serious guys.
Like close to 400 boats. That's a trained eye to know that, hey, that fish isn't going to make it. Let's get him released, let him go, and hope for the right bite. To be able to do that 500 or 600 times over with 2 or 3 short fish weighed in from what I saw, because we went into the final day without a qualifying billfish weighed in.
Could you imagine going out on the final day and hooking that, just knowing that all you need to do is meet the minimum and you're going to be raking in millions of dollars. Yeah. But yet, only 3 billfish weighed in for over 600 caught. So
kudos to that entire fleet of fishermen. Love to see it. You guys put up some impressive numbers, and you had a well-trained eye, so good job.